We are taking a look at the Kostantinivka area in Ukraine as the Russians approach the city. And you can see that the Russians now have a firm grip on what would be the southern and southeastern portions of the city. They advance slowly, initially having to go by the Kleban-Bisky reservoir, and that took quite a bit of cleanup for them to first get to the perimeter of the reservoir and then clear that area to the south. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians were coming back and forth over boats, inflatable boats, and they were being targeted. So also they were cutting off supplies brought to those soldiers on the southern part of the Kleban-Bisky reservoir. So Russia eventually was able to get to the perimeter of the reservoir, then to take the southern portion of the reservoir, and then slowly do a clearing operation to the north of the reservoir as they move closer and closer to Kostantinivka. Also, they slowly moved into Ivanopilia. So this has been a very slow advance. And just to give you an idea of the distances and time, if you see here to the right, top right, let's put it in the top right here, here's Bakhmut, and Bakhmut is roughly about 8 kilometers or so, not maybe about 5 miles from Bakhmut to where the Russians are now. So they've advanced 5 miles in 4 years. So this has been extremely slow. In fact, some still say that Ukraine has a presence in Chasiv Yar, and the Russians were to the perimeter of Chasiv Yar, I believe, in 2023. Bakhmut was taken by the Russians in May of 2023. So this has been very slow movement. Now what we have is Russia took the city Berystok, and stock in the Slovakian language, I believe, means hill. So like in Poland, you have Białystok, White Hill. So you have Berystok, and so that's hill. So this is a high point. So they were moving from the reservoir up to the high point in Berystok, and they also blew this dam. So that basically created an impassable situation for all the access roads except the main access road, which is this one here. So all these other roads were cut off, and the water flooded these homes here in the floodplain. So a bad place to build your home, I think, to build a home in a possible floodplain. But anyway, so basically Russia cut off access except for this main road. And you say, why didn't Russia cut off the access from the main road into Kostantinivka? Well, there is a military principle that you always leave an exit for the enemy, because if you cut off all exits, then they will be more determined and will feel cornered when they have an exit. They always think that they have a way to get out in case things go south. So that was a tactical decision here to try to provide some psychological advantage for the Ukrainians to think that they always have this exit road out of Kostantinivka. Now, Kostantinivka itself is cut into two parts. You have this river, the Kryvyi Torets River, and this river basically creates two different cities, the city to the north of the river and the city to the south. So this is all advantageous for Russia. And basically the southern part should be the easiest part for Russia to take, now that the Kryvyi Torets River has thawed, because it'll be more difficult for Ukrainian forces to be supplied and rotated. But the problem here with this area between this natural barrier and the southern part of Kostantinivka is that this is all very open, and there aren't, especially look at these fields, there's no good defensible locations except in these tree lines, and there's not much of a tree line there, but that's where they're going to go. So the Russians are going to go establish a presence from the tree lines over to this water barrier. So first they need to close off their forward advance here to the west of Ilinivka over to Dovabalka. So they need to close off this area so that they can start moving north. But also there could be a very strong presence here of the Ukrainian forces and laying traps, putting mines and booby traps in the houses. So they're going to have to clear this town, and house by house, block by block. That will take time. Now that the weather is improving and we don't have the mud and all that, this should then now we should be getting some foliage to help cover the Russian forces. They should be able to get over to Dovabalka and to be able to do a clearing operation of this town and then begin to move north along this water barrier and along the tree line towards until they get to the northern part of Kostantinivka and then begin to move in. Then, of course, the Ukrainians will be in a cauldron, and then they'll need to try to move over to the northern part of the city. Meanwhile, the Russians are slowly starting to fill in the empty, what would be for them the empty space around Chervone. And as I say, this is some of the hardest fought areas of the whole front line. So you can be sure that there are a myriad of Ukrainian defensive lines to keep the Russians from advancing west of Mykolaiivka. And so the task then of the Russians will be to move into Dovabalka and then move north, and which would be west of the western portion of Kostantinivka, put it in a cauldron, and then begin to move into the city. And of course, the Ukrainians would certainly see that they're in a cauldron and would probably decide to move to more defensible positions north of the Kryvyi Torets River. So anyway, and also on the other side, you can see that they are advancing, and here in the area of Libivka. So once they get this moving over, they will try to approach this. Looks to be a, would that be train line? Looks to be a train line. So they'll come over to the train line. So their job will then be to move over to the train line to fill that in, and to set up a defensive line here by this, what looks to be another reservoir, and there looks to be a pretty good defensible position to set up a position here using the tree lines, the natural barriers that are in place, to fill in around the train tracks, and then to cross over where they can find, probably over to Kortivka, where they can begin to find some shelter from the drones, and then take the head on over to Kindrativka. So it looks like on the north end to go in the easiest to move portion towards Kindrativka, and in the southern portion to fill in all this area of the reservoir up to where the flooded area is, in the northern part of Kostantinivka, and then take these two different sections, each in their own, as you know, independent, as if they were independent cities. So, and of course, what is the task of the Ukrainians? The Ukrainians is to make it as difficult as possible for the Russians to advance northwards, and to clear the city of Dovabalka. Also over here on the area west of Chasiv Yar, to continue to rotate and strengthen their myriad of defensive lines here west of Chasiv Yar, and try to slow down the Russians. But of course, if they stay in this area south of Chervone for long, they can easily be put in another cauldron and be trapped. So that is the situation here in Kostantinivka. We may be looking for quite a lengthy process of the Russians going slowly, patiently. There's no one cracking the whip, no one forcing the Russians to go fast. They're taking each of these sections slowly, first with their artillery, then their drone teams, their forward advanced troops moving in pairs, and then setting up their bringing their regular army behind them. So this is a very slow process, requires a lot of patience. We can't be making predictions of the Russians taking Kostantinivka anytime soon, but the Ukrainians could make the decision that the city is becoming indefensible, and to pull back to more defensible lines, and to focus on the city of Slovyansk. But for the moment, as you can see, the Ukrainians are very successful in keeping the Russians at bay for many years now, slowly retreating from Bakhmut towards Konstantinovka, and now it's crunch time for the Ukrainian defense as it begins to see holes and to be put into indefensible cauldrons. And so anyway, that is the situation here in the Konstantinovka front. If you like this video, please hit the like button, share, and subscribe. And if you want to leave any comments below, please do so. And like I say, there's no rush on the Russian side to push forward to try to take this city, unless, of course, there is a message given from Gerasimov to the generals in this area to move this forward a little bit faster. But you can see that this area has been pretty quiet for quite a while, slow advances here and there. And this was a very hard winter, very difficult to move forward. Terrible conditions, freezing rain, extreme cold, rainy, warm days, and then followed by cold days. I'm sure the soldiers, many of them were sick, and the sicknesses could have been passed around through the various defensive areas. So, but now that the winter is at its end, and the ground will begin to dry, and the heavy machinery can now advance. We could see, the artillery moving closer and closer, the drone teams moving closer, and the Russians and Ukrainians getting closer and closer together. So we will see how this area goes, but this is the way I see it from the topographical point of view. What would be beneficial to Russia, and what does Ukraine need to do? So anyway, thanks again for joining me for this video. And like I said, please like this video if you liked it, share and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you back for the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.